Hey, welcome to Multiplication today. My name's Molly Cunningham, if we haven't met. It's my friend Tim Burgoyne. And I just want to say to you, thank you for all that you do to invest in people around you. I know leading groups of people can sometimes be like herding cats. And sometimes the frustrations seem like they outweigh the benefits. I know that sometimes the stuff of other people's lives can feel overwhelming, and sometimes doubt or unworthiness starts to creep in. And I just want to tell you, you are totally qualified by God to do what you're doing. And so we just want to share a few things out of our journey, out of our story around multiplication that we've seen show fruitfulness. So hang with us on this. So multiplication, right?
Yeah, I mean,
This is our topic, Tim.
Yeah.
We love this.
Molly is an absolute expert at this. She got 5 kids.
Yeah.
So she knows more than anybody.
This is
but-
not the sex talk, people. If you
Really?
click this for, yeah, that's, we're
got the
good
wrong
at that
notes?
talk. It's another talk, though, that we do. It's not this one. But the reason why we're sharing this with you today is because I found myself in a place meeting this guy, and we really would want to title this talk, Who's Your Timothy? Because Tim, both literally and figuratively, came into my life as my Timothy. And by that, I mean, I noticed him. I noticed that people followed him. I noticed his gifts. And then we just started doing things together, and I started building into him and offering him the opportunities to lead and do ministry with me, discipleship and leadership training and all of that. And I would have never met him if we weren't serving on the coffee team of all things together, an unlikely place. But he could be my dad. But I started investing in him as a Timothy.
And for me, Molly was my staff contact when I was leading in coffee, and I quickly figured out that this is somebody who, if I want to grow and mature in my relationship with God, that this is a person I want to be around. And I became like a stray cat she fed she couldn't get rid of. I mean, I would, here, let me carry that to your car for you. Here, what? Let's talk about this. I have questions. I just hung around because I wanted to be fed. I wanted to learn by her. And it was one of the best investments I've ever made in my life and in my journey with Christ.
Yeah, we have just become so close just through all that we've gotten to do together. And I would say none of the relationship and even the fruitfulness that we've gotten to see in the ways God has used us to multiply things wouldn't have happened if both of us hadn't counted the costs on the front end. So, Jesus did this very thing. He had 12 people he invested heavily in. He went up on a mountain and he listened to the Father and he sought the Father's guidance for who those people should be. Guys like Paul, who wrote this amazing large portion of the New Testament, he had a guy named Timothy, and there are 2 letters in the New Testament that are written to Timothy that are like extra guidance for him. He had guys like Titus too. And I think what Jesus and Paul show us is that addition is far, far inferior to multiplication. Any investor will tell you that multiplication over time, compounded interest is a powerful thing. And so multiplication, this thing, it's not a solo act. When we look at the way Jesus sent people to do ministry, he never sent people on their own. He never sent them as lone rangers. He sent them 2 by 2, and you can look at Luke 10 for yourself and see the instructions that he gave them about going to a town and finding a person of peace. And so before we get into kind of a bunch of the how we do this Timothy thing, how we get a Timothy in our lives, I want Tim to share a little bit about the heart of the why.
Why have a Timothy? I think that's the most important thing maybe that we talk about today, because I can know how to do something, but whether I do it or not really depends on the why. Am I motivated to do it? Why do I want to do it? Why do we have a Timothy? Well, we are called by Christ to have a Timothy. We are called to go forth and to change the world. And we do that through multiplication, and we do that about being about our Father's business, and our Father's business is about teaching others to do what we do. And Jesus showed us how to do that. And we have a pathway we can follow completely. And in Timothy too, this is Paul writing a letter to Timothy, explaining to him, and it says, "In the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others." That's what we're called to do, and that's why we have a Timothy.
And I would say if you don't settle the why of why even multiply, why find a Timothy, the costs are too high. It takes time. It takes investment. The struggle has to somehow have some oomph to it and stickiness. If you don't settle that, the reward's not there for you. The risk is too high. The investment's too high. So we want to share a couple practical things for you about how you can spot a Timothy, what you can look for. And just like in that scripture in Luke 10, Jesus told people to go town to town and find a person of peace. You know, your Timothy is going to be somebody who you naturally gravitate to, who welcomes you, who receives from you, who's taught by you, they serve you. And you will have chemistry with that person. They'll give you energy. You'll like being around them. And we think spotting a Timothy comes down to identifying the fat people around you. That's right, not obese people, fat people, FAT, it's an acronym. Faithful, available, and teachable. And I want to share just a little bit about faithfulness. Faithful people, they are Christ followers. They demonstrate a clear story of surrender to Jesus in their life, and they have fruitfulness that matches that. They can share their story in a powerful way that helps people understand what God's story is and how theirs connects to it. They have this potential for growth, opportunities for growth, and they're trustworthy. They follow through on their commitments. Their yes is yes. They're faithful. Probably somebody who could lead your group in your absence.
Mm-hmm. And then available. I mean, someone who's available is somebody who has passion, who has energy, who's excited about taking on a role of leadership. They have time. They're willing to rearrange their schedule. They're willing to sacrifice other things to be able to do this. They have the ability, maybe it's health. Are they or a family member in a situation or in a time of life where it's not a good time? You need people that have who are healthy and able to take on the role of leadership. And then, do they have good, healthy personal relationships? Are they available to other people? Do they have those sorts of relationships that would help in that season of life to lead? And then the other is teachable. And are they willing to slot themselves under you? Are they learners? Do they want to know more? Are they just happy with where they are? And do they take feedback? Are they willing to listen to you and to take what you have and use it to grow themselves and grow their abilities to lead? And we just want to take a few minutes now and just reflect back on who's your Timothy. And I think there's probably about three kinds of people out there. And there's probably people who are leading now, and maybe you need to identify your Timothy. And there may be people who are just about ready to lead, aren't leading yet, and you're thinking, well, I won't need a Timothy for a long time. That's not true. Do things in pairs. You shortly after you start leading, start looking and finding and identifying your Timothy. And the third group, maybe somebody said, look, I'm not ready to lead right now. I don't think I'm prepared to do that. Well, then you may need to be looking for, who can I be someone's Timothy? Who can I slot myself under and learn, with the expectation I will grow and I will lead myself? So let's take just about 30 seconds here and try to identify who your Timothy is.
In that time of reflection, we're hoping that maybe a face or a name came to mind as you got to press pause and just ask God a little bit about that. But maybe no name or no face came. And that's okay too, because my thought and my hope is that you'll just step into a place of expectancy with God, that He's going to reveal that person to you. So once you do have that name or that face, or God reveals that person to you, it's time to do what I call the 4-letter conversation, ICNU. It's actually not an acronym like FAT. It's basically I see in you. And so we want to give you a chance to model that, but we want to show you what that would look like. It's very simply affirming your observations about somebody's character, their abilities, and then asking them to step intentionally into a relationship with you as you could build into them as your Timothy. So here's what that conversation would look like for me. Chuck Mingo, I just see this amazing ability in you to teach other people and to be able to share really sound biblical truth. And I would love to take a chance to draw our relationship closer and to have you just invest in you and build into you in any way with anything God's given me. But I would just love to see you grow even more, and wonder what you think about exploring that kind of maybe intentional, different sort of space of relationship with me.
Well, I know the answer to that because I was in a room where Chuck Mingo was speaking, and he said one of the first people that helped him and led him and grew him when he came to Crossroads was Molly Cunningham. And when he said that, I raised my hand and said, me too. And so, yes, that...
Yeah, but I bet, Tim, you remember times when you could point to those specific asks, the I see in you conversation with me,
Yes.
where I had to take a risk, and then I was left in that space, not knowing like what would happen as a result of that. And so we want you to feel confident in that and practice those skills, because you don't know when that opportunity is going to come up. Maybe it's as your group's closing down, maybe it's over a cup of coffee, but there will be a scenario where you're going to have the courage to step into that space and ask somebody to come alongside of you in humility. We have to be as humble as we want the people who follow us to be. And so I just want to say, there are a lot of things that you do and I do in group settings we lead. We organize food, we schedule things, we choose materials and pray about it and try to discern what does the group need. There's vulnerable conversations that happen. There's weeks that it's a dud and you wonder, why did I do this thing? And you spend a lot of time, I spend a lot of time on those things with my group. And I would say above all those things that we could give our time to, investing in a Timothy, because of the power of multiplication, could be the singular most important thing you do in the life of leading your group. And so without a Timothy, literally your group ends. And we know that's not the calling God's placed on us. We are here today because people did not let the good news end with them. They didn't let the gospel end with them. Jesus, the story didn't end with the empty tomb or the disciples or with Paul or with Timothy. It extended to you and to me and to Tim. And so we just want to encourage you to figure out your next step.
What's your next step? And I think that's important. We need to take another step here. And what I would say is, the first thing I do is write down what you think God is saying to you. And then pray to God and ask Him to identify that person. If that person is identified to you already, take the next step to have that conversation with the person. If that person is not, pray in expectation that person will be revealed to you. And if you're in the position of not ready to lead, pray to God to reveal to you who you can be a Timothy to, who I can slot myself under, and how I can grow myself to take on the role of that leadership. And we are so excited that you're here listening today with us, and we know that God wants you to take this next step.
Yeah, and these are the things, just by you sitting, watching, learning, leaning into growth with God, just by simply submitting to even watching this today, you are taking steps and making moves so that your life is one worth imitating. And for that, I'm just thankful to be a part of this community and call this place my community with people like you who are being courageous and stepping into these new places. So thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you.